The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television. This program on Pioneer Public Television is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4, 2008. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yekel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org. The Arrowwood Resort and Conference Center, your ideal choice for Minnesota resorts offering luxury townhomes, 18 holes of golf, Darling Reflection Spa, Big Splash Water Park, and much more. Alexandria, Minnesota, a relaxing vacation or great location for an event. Explore alex.com. Easy to get to, hard to leave.
Welcome to Postcards, our weekly look at the arts, history, and cultural heritage of western Minnesota and beyond. This week we'll explore the unique food called Lefse, a Scandinavian tradition that's been passed down for generations in Minnesota. First, we'll learn how to make Lefse at home with Dennis and Carole Johnson.
There we go. I think it's about ready.
Sure looks that way. It's important for the griddle to be hot enough.
Oh, it is.
Now, there are oodles of different Lefse recipes, and I'm sure there are lots of people who would say I'm doing it entirely the wrong way. But it is the way I do it, and it does consistently produce Lefse. Now, the final Lefse recipe is going to use 2 cups of flour with those potatoes. I only put in 1 cup to knead in. The way you can tell when it's kneaded enough is you look at the edges of the ball, and if they no longer crack so that you have a smooth outer surface, then you know that you've kneaded enough.
And Dennis will roll it out and get it as round as possible, and then he'll put it here on this griddle, and I'll use this griddle, this Lefse stick, and as you can see it's very thin here because you need to go under the Lefse and turn it over. How are the potatoes coming, Dennis?
Well, I think it's just about ready. One very important task is to prepare your board so that it's not going to be sticky. So you work in an abundance of flour. I use 2 rolling pins. This has got a plain surface, and then I finish it with this rolling pin, which will give me a thinner Lefse when it's done. I have found that about the right amount is roughly a third of a cup, and it helps in doing the rounding if you start out with something like the right shape.
As you can see, Dennis's aren't very round.
Well, this is the first one. The first one is always a jagged mess. I don't know why that is.
And it comes over here, and we'll let this cook. And I'm just going to look at underneath, and it's starting to turn a light color brown, so I'm just going to turn it.
And there's absolutely no point in bursting the bubbles. Some people do that, but
no.
There's really no reason to do that. Lefse, the day you make it, is absolutely the best. It never gets better than it is that first day.
You see it has those little brown spots. Now I'm just going to put it here to cool it. I like mine with butter and a little sugar. I like white sugar. Some people like brown sugar, and some people think it's a sin to put anything on it. Oh, there's a nice one, Dennis. Good job.
How do you like the thickness of that one?
That one's nice.
The 5 cups of potatoes will usually give 15 Lefse of the size that we are making. So this will go on for about an hour to finish this batch, but it'll be nice, fresh Lefse for us to serve our guests tonight.
For over 25 years, the House of Jacobs has been a leading producer of Lefse, filling orders worldwide. Dennis Jacobs takes us inside his Spicer bakery and shows us how the House of Jacobs has brought Lefse to the digital age.
The House of Jacobs started in the early to mid 70s. My parents, John and Bernice Jacobs, invented and designed a pastry board to make rolling lefse easier. Mom always had trouble with the lefse sticking to the pastry cloth that she was using, and Dad came up with the idea of making the pastry board with the elasticized cover, and it just kind of took off from there. We started with a very small store in Wilmer, moved within 4 or 5 years to a little bigger store, and then purchased a few years later the final store we had in Wilmer, and purchased the bakery here in Spicer, where we still continued to make the lefse.
I've been working for the House of Jacobs for over 23 years, and I started by an ad in the paper, and it just said pastry roller needed, and so I answered the ad, and I was so excited because it was the House of Jacobs, and I absolutely love the tradition of making lefse. Well, before I started working at House of Jacobs, I had a best girlfriend. Her and I would make the potato Swedes, they're called. It's a potato sausage, and then we'd make the homemade lefse too. And we didn't have the first idea on how to make lefse at that time. I was still practicing, and we would just make a mess in my kitchen. And that's why I wanted to start working here. And my boss's mother showed me how to do it, and I went from there 23 years later.
We ran the Wilmer store for, it must be 18, 19 years, and with steady progress through the different stores that we were involved in, and just the business just continued to grow. After we closed the Wilmer store and got most of our merchandise taken care of one way or the other, either sold on sale or given, we gave a bunch of it to church groups and things like that who would be able to sell it at their rummage sales and things like that. We went full time into the internet and into our website as our selling device. Our online business that we have now has a lot of parallels with our brick and mortar business that we had down in Wilmer. We have online customers that we've had now for 10, 15 years, and we had customers at our store in Wilmer that we'd had for 10, 15, 20 years, you know. And you get to know the people, even though you've probably never laid eyes on them. Since we started our internet business, we've taken orders from all 50 states. In fact, I think New Hampshire was the last one that we had never had an order from, and we got one from in December of this year. We have shipped lefse making equipment as far away as Australia. We've shipped to Japan a couple times. I think those were mainly military families that were there. And we did ship for 4 or 5 years running to a person in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. And he ordered every year for 4 or 5 years. And I think that's fun now, doing that. Seeing that we can provide these people with something for their holiday, you know, like that helps them think back to their childhood and gives them just a good feeling. They get a good feeling by having something that they had when they were kids.
I think the business of lefse has lost its forefathers. They have passed on. And there's so many people that haven't kept up their tradition. And I think that's where it comes down to, the tradition. I started working for House of Jacobs around 23 years ago. And I really enjoyed it because my grandparents on both sides made lefse, and so I grew up with lefse, and I wanted my grandchildren to enjoy it as much as I did as a child.
Every generation changes some way in how they perceive where they came from. at my age, I think when I was in my 20s and 30s, it wasn't all that important to me that I was half Norwegian and part Swede and all that. Didn't make any difference. But now, as you get older, you start to think back maybe to your roots some, and I think it's important just to remember where you started, where your parents started. It's not the end-all, be-all, but it's something that is interesting to most people.
I would like to tell the youth to have your parents try and make lefse. Do it as a family. It's really, really fun to get flour all over the kitchen, and everybody is buttering the lefse and they're saying how good it is.
The House of Jacobs, as it stands today, is run, what I think, very efficiently. We don't have a lot of people, but we have some very good people.
I like working for the House of Jacobs because of the people I've worked with. It's been really, really fun getting to know them. Like the packager, LaRose, has been with this company now for maybe 12 years. And there's a couple of other ladies that have been here for 8 years, 6 years, and it's like a little family here.
Making lefse here at the House of Jacobs actually starts the day before we make the lefse. The potatoes and the shortening are mixed and mixed up the night before, cooled overnight, and then the next morning we have one of the girls, she mixes the flour with it then and patties out the lefse for the girls to do the rolling. Then when they come in at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, they already have little patties about that big ready to go, and they start rolling the lefse. Well, they roll lefse just one after another, put one on, watch it for a while, put the next one on, take the first one off. It's just, I mean, they've got a system going that's just, it's really fantastic. For people who just roll lefse and roll on the little grill at home, they wouldn't believe how, they say, wow, we roll 50 lefse a day, and these girls are rolling 500 apiece, And so they're excellent. They're just really good. And once the lefse is rolled, it's stacked on our cooling rack, and then our packager comes once the lefse has cooled, and the lefse is taken into the packaging room, and there it's packaged in 3 different ways. We package it in a package of 3, where the lefse are folded and put on a little paper tray and then sealed with a plastic label. They're packaged into the size that they're being sold at. Some of them we sell cases, some of them we sell individuals, some of them we sell 3 or 4 at a time, and they're packaged into that, and then we just wait for the orders and out they go. So that's our process. It starts, everything is done, everything is hand rolled, everything is hand packaged, everything is hand shipped. It may not be the most efficient, but at least it gives us the best lefse that way.
The internet has changed the lefse buying process. I think with the older generation, they're not as apt to go on to the internet like the younger generation that are more familiar with the computers. And we do at times get like 80-year-olds on the internet, and they'll have a problem, they'll call me, and I'll walk them through.
They call us on the phone and say, I've ordered here for 10 years, I want the same thing I had last year. So you get the same kind of relationship that you had with the actual people when you're just dealing over the phone with them. It's just a long distance relationship.
To order your own freshly made lefse or supplies, go to houseofjacobs.com. Now we'll learn about a little town called Starbuck, Minnesota, and how it became the proud home of the world's largest lefse.
it was a Depot Society that began to think about that, well, we've got to do something to keep this in our minds, that we actually have made the world's largest Lefse. And so it was Dory Peterson at that time that thought we needed to start having Lefsedagen. And so now it is 25 years continually that we've been doing this.
And so it got to be time to talk about a centennial. And so we started gathering plans and arranging for a centennial, which turned out to be fantastic. It was a wonderful thing. But we needed a focus because this Norwegian community needed something. We had to do something bigger and better than anybody else. And Morris Amundsen suggested that we make a Lefse. And of course, everybody's sitting there, Lutefisk didn't sound too good. Lefse sounded better than that.
Yes, my husband Morris came home from a meeting, and because they were wondering what to do to celebrate our anniversary. And he came home and said, you know what I did? I just threw out the idea that we should just make the world's largest Lefse. And he said, I couldn't believe it. It caught on.
I've rolled many towels
And ring goes the telephone, and it's somebody from Pillsbury. And he said, do you have
there's 3 balls left here.
potatoes? And I said, I don't know, but we'll find out. And he said, well, how many do you want? We'll send, I don't know if they send the actual potatoes or certificates or whatever to our supermarket. Okay, so that's fine. So then we had potatoes. And then he said, what about butter? I said, butter? I don't know. Okay, butter. So he said, call Land O'Lakes. So Land O'Lakes, oh, fine, guess what? All the butter, just be sure you use lots of butter. And the cartons would be nice to have those out, that it's Land O'Lakes. Okay, that's fine. So I call, and back when you had an operator, 25 years ago, the operator would say, what number do you want? And I told her I wanted the number for Hartford Charcoal. It's out in California someplace. And she said, there's no number for Hartford Charcoal. And I said, no number. I mean, I've got the carton right here. It's on every package, Hartford Charcoal. And she was so nice, and she said, you know, I wonder if it isn't a division of Hilux Corporation. Okay, Hilux Corporation, that sounds good to me. So lo and behold, I call Hilux, and I said, I'd like to talk to somebody in Hartford Charcoal, and they said, okay. And before too long, I'm talking to this man, and I'm telling him about our big Lefse that we're going to make, and it's going to be a world record Lefse, and it's going to be all this and that. And she said, or he said, I said, do you know what Lefse is? And he said, no. And I said, California, Lefse, how am I going to explain this? And I said, tortilla. It's like a tortilla, but it's made out of potatoes rather than corn. Oh, I know what that is. Well, then, of course, as long as we're making this big Lefse, and we're going to do these grand things for our centennial, let's talk to Guinness Book of World Records and see what they say about this. Okay, back to the phone and talk to the Guinness people, and they're saying, Lefse. Record Lefse. Oh, okay, well, I don't know about that. And then I told him we were a Norwegian community. He said, Schibsted in Norway has its Schibsted record book. They would love your record, breaking Lefse. Okay, call Norway and say, guess what, you know, we're going to make this big Lefse. And, oh, great. Well, so they held up production on their book until we had finished our Lefse. And so we are in the Norwegian Schibsted record book, which is more appropriate for our community anyway, to be in to be in the Guinness book, because, you know, the Norwegian book is much more fun.
We use the puff paste shortening, which has got a lot of elasticity. It's for when you're making apple turnovers. I thought I'm going to use that shortening and really chill the dough good. And the first time we rolled it out that day, we had a big hay rack with a board and a cloth on it for rolling out. And I just used my regular rolling pin from the bakery and got it out. I think it was 9 feet 6 inches by 9 or something like that. One gentleman, he's passed away now, but Morris Wallin, and I said, you know, if we're going to make a great big one, we have to have a huge, huge rolling pin. And then we had to make the dough, roll the dough up on it, and then roll it back out on the hot sheet to bake it. Then with the new shortening, then when we rolled it rolled out perfect and was able to hang together as we rolled it up and then rolled it out on the hot frying surface. And then when we got to roll it up again as it's partially baked on one side, and then you roll it out, you know, flip the thing over and roll it on this way, and it's held together. They always say the good thin Lefse is the best. Well, this was pretty darn thin, I thought. And of course it wasn't real thin but it was pretty darn thin compared to what people would think it would be.
And so we started buttering and breaking it into pieces and handing it to everyone. They were lined up, ready for some more Lefse. And it was just a great day. Well, the crowd was just scattered all around us, and it was a huge crowd. And it was exciting to see so many people there. It was a thrilling moment.
Oh, was there a crowd? There was people all over the place. And they were all, well, I'm sure they were all saying, this isn't going to work, but by golly, it worked.
And then we thought, oh, we need to send this to the governor. And there was a local lady that was a pilot, and so she flew the Lefse to Governor Perfich at that time. So we were pretty proud of that. It was a wonderful, wonderful day, and we continue to celebrate.
Well, Starbuck is 1,200 people, and I'm sure they were all here, plus everybody who has ever lived in Starbuck or ever heard about Starbuck was here. And like I have always said, if we have traffic jams in Starbuck, I love it. It's a good problem. Other people don't like it, but I thought it was great.
Oh, I might say, there was a town in the state of Washington that were going to beat us. And they tried making it, but it didn't work. So we still have the world's largest Lefse, but they did say, only real potatoes will ever touch our grill. And of course we used instant, so that was their excuse for not being able to do it. So, thank you.
That's all for this week. For more information about postcards, go to our website at pioneer.org/postcards. Now, we'll leave you with a postcard from Morris, Minnesota. I'm Dana Johnson, and thanks for watching.
This program on Pioneer Public Television is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4, 2008. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yekel Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org. The Arrowwood Resort and Conference Center, your ideal choice for Minnesota resorts offering luxury townhomes, 18 holes of golf, Darling Reflection Spa, Big Splash Water Park, and much more. Alexandria, Minnesota, a relaxing vacation or great location for an event. Explore alex.com. Easy to get to, hard to leave.